The night was cold and full of strange sounds. John moved carefully through the alien jungle, his boots sinking into wet moss. The air smelled of sharp metal and sweet flowers. He had been on this planet for 3 weeks, helping the research team collect samples. Tonight, he was far from camp, too far, but he needed to check the signal that had appeared on his scanner. The signal came from the east, deep in the thick trees. At first, he thought it was just an animal. But then he heard its soft crying. John froze. It was not the growl of a beast or the hiss of an insect. It was the sound of a child. He pushed forward, brushing aside glowing leaves, stepping over roots that looked like snakes. The crying grew louder. Soon he saw a small shape under a bush. It was a girl. She was tiny, no more than 6 or 7 years old. Her skin was pale silver, shining faintly in the moonlight. Her hair was white as snow, tangled with leaves and dirt. Her eyes, large and glowing blue, looked up at him with fear. She wore a torn dress made of strange fabric, and her bare feet were cut and bleeding. When she saw him, she tried to crawl backward, but her leg got caught in the roots. She whimpered, pulling weakly. John knelt slowly, showing his hands. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The girl didn't answer. She didn't seem to understand his words, but her eyes stayed locked on his. Her breathing was fast. He reached forward carefully and freed her leg from the roots. When he touched her, her small hands grabbed his wrist. She didn't let go. Suddenly, a deep growl came from behind them. John's head snapped up. 2 glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness between the trees. Then another pair. And another. Shapes moved fast and low. Predators. John's single quotes, heart pounded. He lifted the girl into his arms. She was light, almost too light, like she hadn't eaten for days. He ran. Branches whipped his face, and shadows chased him. The growls grew louder. Something leaped from the side, and he barely dodged it. The girl buried her face in his chest, her little hands clutching his shirt. In the distance, through the fog, John saw the dark outline of a crashed shuttle. Its hull was broken and covered in vines, but it might give them shelter. He sprinted toward it. A predator lunged from behind, snapping its jaws just inches from his back. He dived into the shuttle's open side, rolling to protect the girl. The metal floor was cold under his hands. The predators didn't follow immediately. They circled outside, growling, their eyes glowing like fire. One of them scratched at the shuttle's wall, leaving deep marks. John put the girl down gently. She looked around, wide-eyed, but she didn't cry now. She just sat there, breathing fast. He took out his flashlight and scanned the inside of the shuttle. It was empty except for broken seats and twisted metal. No power, no doors that could lock. The girl pointed at something, a small hole in the wall. John moved a piece of metal to cover it. Outside, the growls came closer again. Something heavy slammed into the shuttle, making the wall shake. John grabbed his emergency flare. "This better work," he muttered. He ran to the opening and fired. The flare high into the night. It burst into bright red light, hissing loudly. The predators stopped for a moment, their eyes narrowing. Then, one by one, they slipped back into the dark jungle. Silence returned, except for the faint hum of the flare burning on the ground. John went back to the girl. She was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. When he knelt beside her, she looked up at him, and for the first time she smiled, just a small, tired smile. He smiled back. "You're safe now." She tilted her head as if she didn't understand the words, but something in his voice made her relax. She reached out and touched his chest, then rested her head against him. John looked out into the dark jungle. Whatever had happened to this girl, she didn't belong out here alone, and whatever had chased them tonight might come back. He knew one thing for sure: he couldn't leave her. Not now, not ever. John didn't sleep that night. The girl lay curled up beside him on the cold metal floor of the crashed shuttle, her tiny chest rising and falling in slow breaths. She had wrapped herself in his jacket, and even in sleep, her hands clutched the fabric tightly, like she was afraid he would vanish if she let go. Outside, the jungle whispered. Leaves rustled. Far away, something screamed a high, sharp sound that didn't belong to any animal he knew. Every noise kept John on edge. When the sun's first pale light touched the shuttle walls, John decided it was time to move. Staying here was asking for trouble. Predators always came back. He crouched next to the girl. We have to go, he said softly. She opened her eyes, blinking at him. She still didn't speak, but when he held out his hand, she took it without hesitation. John stepped outside. The air was damp and heavy. Mist clung to the ground, and the jungle looked even larger in daylight. He scanned the area. No glowing eyes, no shapes moving in the shadows. Still, his gut told him they were being watched. They started walking. The girl kept close, her small, bare feet making almost no sound. Every few steps, she would glance behind them, her blue eyes scanning the trees. She wasn't just scared. She was expecting something. 2 hours passed. The terrain grew rougher, full of steep slopes and tangled roots. John's muscles ached from carrying her the night before, but he didn't complain. She was light, but the weight of keeping her safe felt heavier than any pack. Then it happened. A sound low, wet, and rumbling rolled through the trees. It was the same growl from last night. John's blood went cold. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her forward. Run, he said. They broke into a sprint. Branches whipped his arms, and the ground seemed to grab at his boots. Behind them, the growls multiplied. The predators were back, and this time they weren't just chasing. They were hunting. The girl stumbled on a route. John scooped her up without slowing down. She buried her face in his shoulder, but he could feel her shaking. A shadow darted across their path, fast, too fast. Another shape appeared to the left. They were being surrounded. John's mind raced. Running in a straight line would get them caught. He turned sharply toward a narrow ravine, hoping the tight space would slow the predators down. The path narrowed, the walls rising high on both sides. The growls echoed louder now, bouncing off the stone. John's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Suddenly, one of the predators leaped from above. John dropped to one knee, sliding on the dirt, and the creature slammed into the ground where they had been seconds ago. Its body was long and sleek, covered in black scales that shimmered faintly in the light. Its jaws were lined with too many teeth, each one sharp as a blade. John didn't wait for it to recover. He kicked it hard in the side, then scrambled up. With the girl still in his arms, the ravine opened up into a clearing, and there, half buried in vines, was an old research outpost. The roof was partially collapsed, but the walls were still standing. If they could make it inside, they might hold out long enough for help to find them. The predators were close now. He could hear their claws scraping stone. John sprinted toward the outpost. The door was half broken, hanging on one hinge. He slammed it shut behind them and shoved a metal crate in front of it. For a moment, there was silence. Then, bang. The door shook violently. Another bang. The crate slid an inch. The girl cried out softly, pressing herself against him. John, quickly, scanned the room. There was an old emergency ladder leading to the roof. Up, he said, pointing. She looked scared, but obeyed, climbing the rusted rungs. John followed, just as the door splintered. They reached the roof. From here, the jungle stretched endlessly. But in the distance, John spotted something, a thin trail of smoke rising into the sky. Smoke meant people. He grabbed the girl's hand. "We have to jump." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. They jumped down onto a sloping section of the roof, slid to the edge, and landed in the thick undergrowth below. The crash behind them told him the predators had reached the room they had just left. No time to stop. No time to think. They ran again, pushing through ferns taller than John, the sound of pursuit fading, but not disappearing. Only when they reached a shallow stream did John stop to catch his breath. The girl was breathing hard too, but she didn't cry. She just looked at him with those big, glowing eyes, as if silently asking, "What now?" John glanced toward the distant smoke. "Now," he said, "we find help." But deep inside, he knew the jungle wasn't done with them yet. The smoke turned out to be from a human scout post, a small metal hut surrounded by sensor poles and a half-broken fence. John pushed through the last line of bushes, his boots splashing in the muddy ground. The little girl followed closely. Her small hand locked around his dot. Two armed guards stepped forward, rifles raised. "Identify yourself." One of them barked. "It's John Harper, survey team." John called back, raising his free hand. "I've got a child with me. She's not human, but she's hurt. We need help." The guards glanced at each other. Our eyes moved to the girl. She stood half-hidden behind John, her blue eyes glowing faintly. One guard's face hardened. "Sir, we don't take alien civilians inside without clearance. Orders are strict." John stepped closer, shielding the girl with his body. "She's just a kid." "Look at her. Does she look dangerous?" The other guard muttered. "Doesn't matter. Could be a spy. Could be infected." The girl's grip on John's hand tightened. He felt her trembling. She didn't understand their words, but she could hear the tone. Fear is universal. John's jaw clenched. "You either let us in, or you explain to command why you left a child outside to die." A tense silence. Finally, the first guard sighed and lowered his weapon. "Fine, but she stays in quarantine." Inside, the hut was small and smelled of oil and damp clothes. A heating unit hummed in the corner. John sat the girl down on a bench and found a medkit. He cleaned the cuts on her feet. She flinched at the sting but didn't pull away. The guards kept stealing glances at her, whispering to each other. Their voices were low, but John caught words like risk, command. "Won't like this, and better to send her away." John ignored them. "You're safe now," he told her. She tilted her head, still not understanding the words, but something in his voice seemed to calm her. She pointed at his chest, then tapped her own. Then she made a small sound, soft, almost like a name. John smiled. "Is that your name?" She repeated it, Lyra. By nightfall, a small transport arrived to take them back to the main base. The ride was bumpy, the vehicle rattling over the uneven ground. Lyra sat beside John, her head resting against his arm. When they reached the base gates, the reaction was colder. Soldiers at the checkpoint frowned when they saw her. One of them said openly, "We've got enough trouble without alien kids hanging around." The base commander, a tall man with a sharp voice, met them at the entry. His eyes went straight to Lyra. "Mr. Harper, you brought an undocumented alien minor into a human facility. Do you have any idea what that could mean politically?" John kept his voice even. She was alone in the jungle. No food, no protection. Predators were hunting her. What was I supposed to do? Walk away? The commander's expression didn't soften. "We don't know who she is or what kind of trouble follows her. She stays under guard until we figure this out." Lyra's small hand clung to John's sleeve. She didn't know the language, but she could read the mood. Her eyes were wide, searching his face for some kind of answer. John crouched down so they were eye to eye. "It's okay. I'll be here." The guards tried to take her to the quarantine section. She panicked, crying out and wrapping both arms around John's leg. "Hey," John protested. "Don't manhandle her." The commander's voice was like, "Ice, she stays there until we know who's coming for her." John followed as far as he could, but the heavy doors shut in his face. The sound of her cries echoed in the hallway until they faded. That night, John sat alone in the mess hall, staring at his untouched food. Around him, soldiers talked and laughed, but he barely heard them. He kept seeing Lyra's face, afraid, confused, and alone again. Then he heard the sound of soft footsteps. He turned. Lyra stood in the doorway. She was supposed to be locked in quarantine, but somehow she'd slipped out. She walked straight to him, ignoring the stares from the room. Without a word, she climbed onto the bench beside him and leaned into his side. The commander would be furious. The guards would probably drag her back any minute. But right now, none of that mattered. John put his arm around her. She whispered something he didn't understand. But the tone was clear. "Don't leave me." And John knew no matter what orders came, he wasn't going to. The next morning began like any other gray skies. Cold wind, the steady hum of the base's power generators. John was on repair duty, fixing a sensor pole near the gate. His thoughts kept drifting back to Lyra. She had been forced back into quarantine last night. He hadn't seen her since. Every time he asked the guards about her, they gave short, clipped answers. "She's fine. Orders are orders." But then the air changed. A strange vibration rolled through the ground, subtle at first, then stronger. The guards at the gate straightened, their hands moving to their weapons. In the distance, a shadow appeared in the sky. It grew quickly, too quickly to be a cloud. Within moments, the shape became clear. It was a ship, not a human one. Sleek silver. Plating caught the sunlight. Strange flowing symbols glowed along its hull. The engines hummed with a deep, almost musical sound. This was no transport. It was a Royal-class alien dropship built for leaders, not soldiers. The entire base seemed to freeze. The ship slowed, descending just beyond the gate. Dust and loose debris swirled as it landed. The air shimmered from the engine heat, and a low, echoing chime rang out from its speakers like a ceremonial bell. Then the ramp lowered. A woman stepped out. She was taller than most men at the base, with silver skin that shimmered as if lit from within. Her hair flowed like liquid metal down her back, and her eyes were a deep, glowing violet. Her gown was made of layered silk-like fabric in white and gold, each fold embroidered with the same glowing symbols on the ship. Even the wind seemed to hesitate around her. The guards glanced at each other. Some lowered their rifles slowly, realizing who they were looking at. Others simply stared. She walked forward with grace, each step deliberate, her gaze scanning the base. And then she saw John. Without hesitation, she crossed the open space. Soldiers moved to intercept her, but with a single raised hand, she stopped them. There was no threat in her movement, but something about her presence made even armed men step aside. When she reached John, she didn't speak immediately. She looked him over, her eyes lingering on his hands, his face, and the faint dirt stains on his uniform. Then, without warning, she dropped to one knee before him. The soldiers gasped. John froze. What are you?" Her voice, when it came, was low and rich, carrying a weight that silenced the entire base. "You saved my daughter." The words were accented, but clear enough to understand. John's stomach tightened. "Lyra," the woman nodded. "You found her when the jungle would have swallowed her. You risked your life to protect her. In our world, such a thing is not forgotten. It is not unpaid." 2 alien guards armored in gold and silver stepped out from the ship, escorting someone small between them. Lyra, she ran the moment she saw He dropped to one knee and caught her in his arms. She buried her face in his chest, clutching his shirt just like that first night. The woman watched them, her violet eyes softening. Then she spoke again, this time so everyone could hear. In my culture, to save the life of the royal blood is to become part of it. You are bound to us now, John Harper. I am Queen Saranya, and I ask. She took a slow breath, as if the next words carried centuries of tradition. That you take me as your wife. The base erupted in whispers. The commander's jaw nearly hit the ground. A soldier muttered, "Did she just?" John blinked. "Wait, marry you?" "I don't." She raised a graceful hand, stopping his words. "It is not simply my wish. It is our law. Refuse, and it is an insult to the crown. Accept, and you will be bound to us in honor, in life, and in legacy." Lyra peeked up at him, her small hand still gripping his shirt. She didn't understand the full meaning, but she understood one thing: her mother wanted him to stay. The queen stepped closer, so near that John could see faint, glowing lines along her skin, like constellations in the night sky. "You already proved your courage. Now I ask you to prove your heart." John's mind spun. This wasn't just a thank you. This was a union between two worlds, a bond that could change everything for him, for her, and maybe for humanity. The wind carried the silence that followed, heavy with choice, and far beyond the base walls, in the dark of the alien jungle, unseen eyes watched the scene unfold. The base commander's protests echoed behind them as Queen Saranya led John toward her ship. "This is highly irregular, Commander." She interrupted without even looking back, her tone calm but edged with power. "You will have your answers. But first, I will have mine." The ship's ramp shimmered under John's boots, almost weightless. Inside, the air was warmer, filled with a faint, sweet scent like fresh rain. The walls curved elegantly, glowing with soft, golden light. Strange symbols shifted across the panels, alive like ripples on water. 2 alien guards flanked the entrance. But they didn't move as Saranya gestured for John to follow her deeper inside. Lyra skipped ahead, her little feet making no sound on the smooth floor. She kept glancing over her shoulder to make sure he was still behind her. They entered a chamber that looked nothing like any room John had seen before. It was circular, with a domed ceiling covered in tiny points of light like a map of the stars. In the center was a low crystal table surrounded by cushions. The queen sat gracefully on one, motioning for John to sit opposite her. Lyra plopped down beside him, leaning against his arm as if she'd always belonged there. "You must understand," Saranya began, her violet eyes fixed on him, "that in my people's law, saving the life of royal blood binds you to the family. Forever, it is not a favor. It is a covenant." John rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't save her because I wanted a reward. I did it because she's a kid and she needed help." Her lips curved it, not quite a smile, but something softer than before. "And that is why I ask you this." She leaned forward, resting her hand on the crystal table. "John Harper, will you take me as your mate?" The air seemed too still. John almost laughed, it not out of mockery, but pure disbelief. "You're serious? I am Queen of Althrea," she said simply. "We do not play with sacred vows." He searched her expression, trying to find any hint of a trick. "And if I say no?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Then you shame me. And in shaming me, you shame my people. It will be remembered for generations. Trade will close. Peace will crack." John stared at the table. He had been in tough negotiations before, but nothing like this. Marry a queen from another world. Be bound to her culture, her laws, maybe even leave Earth forever. And yet, he looked down at Lyra. Her small fingers clutched his sleeve. She was watching him with open trust, the kind that couldn't be faked. He remembered the fear in her eyes when they first met, the way she had clung to him in the jungle. Serenia spoke again, her voice quieter now. "This is not only about law. It is about my daughter. She is young, but she has lost more than most children ever should. She trusts you. That is rare for her kind, rare for her blood." John glanced between them, the child who had clung to him through danger, and the regal, unreadable woman who was offering her hand as part of an unbreakable tradition. "You hardly know me," he said finally. "I know enough," Serenia replied. "You carried her. You fed her. You faced death for her. In my eyes, that tells me all I need." Silence filled the chamber again. Lyra shifted, resting her head against his arm. Finally, John spoke. "If I accept, I need one thing in return." Serenia tilted her head slightly. "Name it." He met her gaze. "I don't want this to be just politics. If I'm part of your family, then our people need to learn to trust each other. This, marriage," he still felt strange saying it, "has to be more than a ceremony. It has to mean peace." For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then, slowly, she stood and walked around the table. She extended her hand toward him. Then, "We will make it so," she said. "Our union will not only bind us, we'll bind our worlds." Her hand hovered there, silver and steady. Lyra looked up at him, her bright blue eyes full of quiet hope. John hesitated, and then took her hand. The moment his fingers closed around hers, the symbols on the walls brightened, and a soft chime filled the air. Serenia's lips curved into a true smile for the first time. "Then it is decided." Outside the ship, however, far beyond the base perimeter, something stirred in the jungle, something that had been hunting Lyra before John found her. And now, it had found her scent again. Asterix's news of the Queen's proposal spread faster than wildfire. By the next morning, every corner of the base was buzzing. Some whispered with awe, others with suspicion. Soldiers gave John double takes as he walked past, as if trying to imagine him sitting on a throne. He wished they wouldn't, in the command center. The base's top officers argued over maps and transmissions. The commander had called an emergency meeting. John wasn't invited, but he could hear the raised voices from the hallway. "It's just one man. It's not about him. It's about what this means. If this goes wrong, it won't just be a broken deal, it'll be war." John turned away, heading to the landing pad where Serenia's ship rested like a silver jewel. He didn't want to hear the rest. Inside the ship, the air was calm. The golden glow along the walls seemed warmer than yesterday. Lyra sat cross-legged on a cushion, drawing patterns on a thin slate with a glowing pen. She looked up when she saw him and broke into a smile. "John," she said, her first time saying his name clearly. He crouched beside her. "Hey, little one," learning new words. She nodded and pointed to herself. "Lyra." Then she pointed to him. "John." And finally, she pointed toward the back of the ship. Mama Serenia appeared from the shadows, her gown today a deep sapphire that shimmered like the ocean. "She has been practicing," she said. John smiled faintly, but it faded quickly. "The base is not happy. My people aren't sure about this. Some think it's a trap." Serenia's expression didn't change, but her eyes grew sharper. "And yours are not the only ones. My council believes humans are too unpredictable. They say I risk the crown by tying it to you." "So both sides hate this," John said with a humorless laugh. The Queen moved closer, her gaze steady. "Then, we will make them see. A bridge is built not in comfort, but in struggle." John shook his head. "You make it sound easy. But they're not just going to accept me because you say so." "You are right," she said. "That is why you will live with us for a time. You will learn our customs, and they will learn you. When they see the man who saved their princess, they will not see an outsider. They will see family. John blinked. You mean, leave the base? Go to your world? Yes, she said simply. The idea was dizzying. The alien jungles he'd seen were dangerous enough. What would her world be like? Palaces, politics, enemies he didn't even know existed. And yet, when he looked at Lyra, quietly watching them with wide blue eyes, he knew he couldn't say no. Not yet. That night, he walked back to the base. To gather his things, the guards at the gate gave him long stares. Inside, the commander intercepted him. Harper, you need to think. Once you leave with her, you may never come back. You'll be in their territory, by their rules. If something happens, we can't just storm in and save you. John adjusted the strap of his pack. If I don't? Go. This whole thing falls apart. And I won't be the guy who turns peace into a war because he was too scared to try. The commander studied him for a long moment, then sighed. You're either the bravest man I've ever met, or the dumbest. John smirked. Probably both. The next morning, the base gathered to watch his departure. Aranya stood at the bottom of the ramp, regal and calm. Lyra bounced on her toes beside her, looking more excited than nervous. John approached, but before he could step onto the ramp, the alarm blared. The sky above the jungle lit up with streaks of fires, small, fast shapes darting between the trees. The sensors screamed warnings. A soldier shouted, multiple contacts closing fast. Saranya's guards rushed to form a wall around her. Lyra's smile vanished as she clung to her mother. John's eyes narrowed. He recognized that movement, the same kind of predators that had chased them through the jungle. Only now, there were more of them, and they weren't hunting blindly. They've found her again. John said grimly. Saranya's voice was steady, but her tone carried urgency. Then we must leave. Now. But as the ship's engines began to power up, something massive moved at the jungle's edge, too big to be one of the beasts. It stepped forward, revealing not an animal, but a machine dark metal, armed and carrying the insignia of a rival alien clan. John realized with a cold weight in his chest. This wasn't just about predators anymore. Someone had come to take the queen's daughter back. The air around the base turned electric. Engines roared, alarms screamed, and soldiers scrambled into defensive positions. The jungle shadow line boiled with movement sleek, black machines stalking forward, each one marked with the red crescent of a rival alien clan. Between them moved their warriors, tall and armored, their faces hidden behind masks carved like snarling beasts. They stopped just outside the fence, their leader stepping forward. His armor was jagged black, lined with red light. When he removed his helmet, his silver skin gleamed like Serena's, but his eyes were a hard, burning orange. He raised his voice so all could hear. Queen Serenia, you broke the sacred accord. By letting your blood walk among humans, hand over the child, or your crown burns today. The base commander barked orders, soldiers aiming their rifles. Serenia stepped forward, unshaken. Lyra clung to her gown, trembling. John moved without thinking, placing himself between Lyra and the approaching warriors. You're not touching her, the rival leader sneered. Human, you have no place in this. Step aside, and you may live. John's voice was steady. You're right. I'm human. And where I come from, you don't get to threaten a child and walk away. Leader's orange eyes narrowed. Then you've chosen death. The first shot cracked the air. The fence's defense grid flared to life, shocking to enemy soldiers who tried to cross. John grabbed Lyra and pulled her toward the ship as Serenia's guards clashed with the attackers. Blades met energy shields, sparks sprang into the air. One of the black-armored warriors broke through the fight and charged straight for them. John shoved Lyra into the ship's hatch, turned, and met the warrior head-on. The impact drove him back, but he held his ground, locking arms with the enemy. The alien's strength was crushing, but John twisted under the warrior's arm and slammed him into the ramp. The warrior didn't get up. Saranya's voice rang out. From the hatch, John sighed. But when John turned, he saw more enemies breaking through the fence. If they got past the guards, Lyra wouldn't be safe even inside the ship. He shook his head. Get the ship ready. I'll hold them. Saranya's eyes met his just for a heartbeat. Something unspoken passed between them. She nodded. The fight became chaos. John grabbed a fallen guard's weaponry. Long spear of alien Metaland met the next attacker with a swing that sent the warrior crashing into a supply crate. Every move was fueled by one thought. They don't get past me. The enemy leader saw him, and with a roar, charged. Their weapons clashed, the impact jarring John's arms to the bone. The leader was faster, stronger, but John fought with the desperation of someone who had nothing to lose, but everything to protect. A sudden hiss of engines filled the air. The Queen's ship was powering up, light blazing along its hull. Lyra's small face appeared in the hatch, eyes wide with fear. The leader lunged for her. John didn't think, he just moved. He stepped between them and took the full hit. Pain exploded through his side as the blade tore into him, but he didn't fall. With a guttural yell, he drove the spear upward, catching the leader under the chest plate. The alien staggered back, shock flashing in his orange eyes before he collapsed. The remaining enemies hesitated, their leader fallen. Saranya's guards pressed forward, forcing them back toward the jungle. Within moments, the black-armored warriors retreated, vanishing into the shadows from where they came. John stumbled toward the ship, blood seeping through his uniform. Lyra jumped down from the hatch before Saranya could stop her. She ran too. Him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You came back," she whispered. John managed a weak smile. "Told you I would." Saranya stepped forward, her usually perfect composure cracked by relief. She placed a hand on his cheek, her voice low but intense. "You've proven yourself to me, to my people, and to any who would doubt you." He glanced between her and Lyra. "So, is this where I say, I do?" Her lips curved in a rare smile. "Not here, not now, but soon. And when that day comes, will be more than a marriage. It will be the first stone of a bridge between worlds." John looked down at Lyra, who was still holding on to him like she'd never let go. "Then, I guess I'm staying." The Queen's ship rose into the air, carrying them toward a future neither could fully see. Far below, the jungle's dark edge, unseen eyes watched them levies that promised this was only the beginning.